evening, everyone. This is the meeting of the Raleigh Board of Selectmen for January 28th, 2019. This meeting is being video recorded and televised live on Raleigh Community Media. First, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. Chief Dumas, would you care to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, our first order of business is an executive session to conduct a collective bargaining session with the Massachusetts Coalition of Police, MCOP, Local 360, pursuant to state open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, and to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Massachusetts Coalition of Police, MCOP, Local 360, pursuant to state open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A. Okay, I'll first call for a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of conducting a collective bargaining session with the Massachusetts Coalition of Police, MCOP, Local 360, pursuant to the state open meeting law, and to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Massachusetts Coalition of Police, Local 360, pursuant to the state open meeting law, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town.
I'll give a motion.
And to return to open session.
We'll return to open session.
I'll second that.
The motion to go into executive session has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye, Joe Perry.
Aye, Dave Peterson.
Aye, Cliff Pierce. The motion is unanimous.
Okay.
Good evening, Bob.
Good evening.
I'm glad you could make it.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is to meet with G. Robert Murray, so we can give him our proclamation for his many years of public service to the town of Raleigh. He began his service to the town as an employee in 1968. I was in high school in 1968. As an auxiliary police officer, and retired as an employee of the Rowley Municipal Light Plant Manager in 1999. After his retirement, he was elected as a selectman in 1998 and as a Board of Light Commissioners in 2006, and has served in these capacities for many years since then. He has also been appointed to numerous other committees over his 50 years of service to the town. And I'm going to read a listing of the numerous capacities that Bob has served in, and there are quite a few. Auxiliary Police Officer, Cemetery Commissioner, Light Department Employee, Light Department Manager, Cannoneer. Did you bring a cannon tonight, or?
A smaller one. Just be careful.
Forest Fire Warden, Skin Diver. You'll have to tell us about that.
Oh, it's fun.
Militia men. Militia person, actually. It's a joke. Cable TV Advisory Committee, Assistant Wiring Inspector, Historic District Commission, Historical Society, Oil Spill Response Team, Computer Use Committee, Town Government Planning Committee, Fire Engineer, Fuel Tank Study Committee, Rowley Civil Defense, DPW Consolidation Study Committee, Rowley House Number Review Committee, Rowley Emergency Management Agency, Center School Restoration and Use Committee, Local Emergency Planning Commission, Selectmen, Election Warden, Clerk and Counter, Community Preservation Committee, Library Building Committee, Board of Light Commissioner, Bradstreet Land Use Committee, 375th Anniversary Committee, Northern Essex Regional Emergency Planning Committee, and finally, but not least, Zoning Review Committee. You could have volunteered more of your time. I mean, come on.
Pretty well.
We just call him the mayor.
Yep. You did or you do have a pilot's license?
Yes. She did too.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Bob's historical knowledge and willingness to help the town in any way that he can will be greatly missed, for sure. We thank him for his dedicated service and wish him all the best. And in that spirit,
Before you do that,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say, I moved to town about 45 years ago. I met Bob, I don't know what year it was, but at that time, he was manager of the light department, he was on the fire department, and he's just been a gentleman, and the knowledge he exudes on a daily basis is just incredible. My wife was director of the Housing Authority for a number of years, and anytime they needed anything in the light department, she'd call Bob, and he would respond. That's the kind of a guy he is and was throughout his career in Raleigh. I don't think there's anybody that didn't, if they needed something, called him, he either got it or knew the person to be referred to, and was more than willing to help us all out. A perfect gentleman from the day I met him, and I think I'm just proud to have known you, and we're going to miss you on the board here, and we hope to see you around town and keep up the good work. And as Joe mentioned there a while back, I think it was Joe or Bob Snow mentioned the last time when we got the resignation, was his historical knowledge of the town is just incredible. And he went back, and if you go back in Sue Hazen's safe, the old town reports going way, way back when, and I don't remember what year it was, Bob, that you picked out. We had a legal case up in what is it? Meeting House Lane.
Oh, yeah.
And Bob, I was sitting here in the office, and Bob came in all excited from the town clerk's office. He had a copy of a document, and it was a page from the town report, and when it was handwritten in those days, and the writing was beautiful. I mean, it was like really great cursive. And Bob says, "Look at this! I found the answer to solve our problem," and it contributed to the case of. He found that the word in the article from like, I don't know, 1780 or something, was southwest and should have been northwest, and that helped the town in our case. But it was a man who went through and looked up, researched through all these old town reports, found the correct one, and went through and read page by page until he came to something that was relevant to our case. And it was just amazing, because I looked at the cursive writing and it's like, you got to be kidding me. But Bob was able to pick that stuff out.
Well, you didn't do it, Mrs.
We'll give you credit. I don't know how you did it, and it doesn't matter, but
Who was it?
Yeah, just looking at some of that writing, I've looked at some of the documents in Sue's office, and it was amazing to, I'm looking at it like it looks good, and I'm sure it does give us some information, but I didn't have a clue, and you were there reading it through, and you knew what they were, what the gist of the document was. It was amazing.
your knowledge is going to be missed. Your knowledge and expertise is.
Well, and to get back to when I was in the school, there was something going on. They didn't tell you, hey, come here and help me out. Get over there and fix it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
In the
But we could always count on you.
Yeah.
To be there to fix it.
Absolutely. So,
That was the good part.
thank you and congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you very much for what you folks are up to.
Okay, Chief, your turn.
Okay.
Want to call Bob up to stand beside you, and he can. Come on, stand up, Bob. Go over here beside the chairman. Little tight quarters here, but yeah, stand right next to him.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, Bob, it's with great honor, and I really mean that sincerely, that I present you with this proclamation. From the town of Rowley, we, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Rowley, Massachusetts, by virtue of the authority vested in us by the people of Rowley as elected officials, do hereby proclaim that G. Robert Merry, having faithfully served the town of Rowley in an exemplary manner for over 50 consecutive years as an employee, an appointed official, and an elected official, and on the occasion of his departure from this service, the Board of Selectmen wishes to bestow its most sincere gratitude. We urge all citizens of the town of Rowley, its community leaders, businesses, and government officials to recognize this achievement and service and join in thanking G. Robert Merry for his many years of service to the town. In witness hereof, I hereby set my hand and seal of the town of Raleigh this 20th day of January 2019.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Can you hold it up so they can take a picture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Stay right there, bud.
This man, Joe, a little bit more. All right. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Yeah, do you need one? Sit down, Bob, I pulled the chair away.
Thanks.
Now that you're finished. I don't know where to go.
It's a money tree.
That means I gotta wash my jacket.
There you go.
Bobby, do you want to get in? You want me to take a photo with you? Sure.
I always said that this was the fun part of being a selectman.
Leaving?
No. To honor somebody with a proclamation.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Thanks,
It's been a
Bob.
pleasure.
Thanks, Bob.
It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, no, really.
I have really enjoyed working with you.
Oh, I know, we've enjoyed it with you, and like you say, everything you've done for the town.
Now, someone has to take this proclamation with
We'll
him.
let him get his coat.
Yeah, oh, yeah, make sure you get the right one. Thank you very much. Really, Sam Day. Oh,
Yeah.
couldn't believe how quick. You can see it coming little by little.
In a
and
true
all
sense of the word.
You know. Yeah, I know it, yeah, no, we're all stubborn and, you know.
Yeah, something would come up in a meeting, and we just ask Bob, and he knew here's all the history about that area of the town, or what happened, or everything, all about it.
His book.
I so admire that.
Yeah, go, you can go back there.
Raleigh book.
Not many places he can go.
I hope Debbie has a secret exit out there. She deserves one.
All right, good night now, take care. Thanks, Bob.
Gotta sneak in before they get out.
Take care, Bob.
Good night, Ginny.
Good.
Thank you.
Take it easy, Bob. Good night.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything you've done. Very, very good. Gotta keep you right on the line. And the boss is saying, come.
Listen to the boss.
Sometimes he listens.
Okay, that was nice.
Yeah, it sure was. Sad day, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we'll have a period of public comment starting now and ending at 7:30?
7:15.
7:15?
Oh, 7:20.
7:25.
Well, 10 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, you're right.
Your
Okay,
choice.
You're right, okay.
Your choice.
Okay, we have a 7:15 appointment with Conservation Agent Brent Vaislock to discuss the Dodge Reservation Conservation Restriction. Good evening, Brent.
Thank you,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
You want to explain what you're here for?
Yeah. I'm just composing myself a little bit. Because, my timing is not great, and I really wish to have former Selectman's Mary's signature on this document. But I'm here to request the signing by the Board of Selectmen of the conservation restriction between Essex County Greenbelt Association and the town of Raleigh for the perpetual preservation and protection of the Dodge Reservation, AKA the Girl Scout Camp.
Okay.
And it was Bob Mary who actually thought of that
Bob Mary,
name,
who
Dodge
suggested
Reservation.
and alerted me to the former homesteading ownership of one of the
Right.
3 parcels, or actually, I believe 2 of the parcels out of the 3, and its connection to the Dodge family. And thus we are here today after negotiations and scrutiny by town council, negotiations by the Conservation Commission, and review and approval by the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs through their Division of Conservation Services, and their scrutiny of the document. And I stand and seated before you to offer you the recommendation that the document has been prepared and acknowledges and sets forth protections of the natural resources and the utilization of the Dodge Reservation, both with the portion that is currently being utilized as the YMCA camp, as well as the other 183 some odd acres in addition to those 10 acres that are going to be protected in their natural condition for the value of their resources and the contribution to the passive recreation opportunities here in the town of Raleigh.
Okay, this is something I'll gladly sign, I know that.
Yeah,
Great thing for the town.
This is a piece of property that really is, in my time on the board here, my time in town, is really probably the nicest acquisition of good property. I mean, the trails out there, the Smith Lane that goes through there, it allows access to the public. I know I see people taking horses and going down through there. The utilization by the YMCA and to keep this as a camp, and our young people and all ages really take advantage of very active use of part of that property, and the rest of it is just great conservation land and wild woods. When you get out there, if everybody hasn't been out there, when you're in the middle, you'd swear you're up in New Hampshire or Maine. It's, it's not like a 5-acre parcel or a 3-acre parcel. You're out with 100 acres of woods and trails, and it's really beautiful. So this is well worth. We'll be proud to sign this, and I know the board worked on this. The Conservation Commission worked on it. It took a long time, a lot of effort, and the town voted to appropriate the money to purchase it, and we're very proud of it.
Very much so, yes.
And
A lot of work went into it.
I have to say, Brent, that you and the Conservation Commission and other volunteers have done an incredible job establishing those trails and maintaining those trails. It's really should be commended for that. Okay, so we have a document for us to approve and sign, is that correct?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the motion to approve the conservation restriction has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay.
Yeah, that deserves that. Yeah, the investment that the Y has made out there, it's been great, and everything has worked out very well. And it took a lot of work on by Brent and the Conservation Commission, a lot of people.
And while we're got some dead space here, I'd like to commend Brent. I mean, he's our conservation agent, and the work he puts in on not only the Y Camp property or the Dodge Reservation, but I see him out there on the weekend with, I assume, his wife.
For the record, yes.
Well, I've never met her, so I'm making a large assumption here. And he's down on 133 across the police station, what's that, Hunsley Hills? Picking up trash and cutting wood, and when we get a bad storm, he's out there trimming, cutting trees. That's all in his own time. He's donating that time. He's not getting paid for that. He gets a salary, so he doesn't get any overtime. He's just so dedicated to conservation and the areas that we've got in town here. He's just, I just want to commend him congratulate him on all he does do, and I know he probably doesn't appreciate being the center of attention, but believe me, we don't get enough opportunities to congratulate him and say to him, thank you for all you do.
Yes.
As we did for Mr. Murray. I mean, you're just everywhere, and you're all over the place when it comes to these conservation lands, and not only paperwork, but cutting trees and logging brush and everything else that goes with it. So thank you very much.
And he's done his best to get me out on the trail, but I keep using the excuse that I'm a little old, but I'm going to get out. Maybe springtime.
But in case you hadn't heard, I have purchased a Honda CRV specifically so I can take you in style.
Wow, I'll have to take you up on that.
But thank you very much. It's very kind for your words of recognition, but it really is, it's very heartwarming to work for a community that values their natural resources and their open space.
Yep.
And unfortunately, I realize Selectman Snow isn't here tonight, but you know his words still ring very true in my mind in regards to his comments to the assemblage at the town meeting, when he said, you know, what can we say to our children if we don't preserve and protect this piece of property?
Yep.
And it turned out that it really is the core of other conservation lands that have now been knit together by that purchase that form a contiguous protected corridor following most of Batchelder Brook and extend from Haverhill Street, Ayers Park, all the way to Weathersfield Street, and some conservation land directly across Weathersfield Street that has been knit together that goes all the way almost to Glen Street, protecting the Mill River corridor. The townspeople are very fortunate to basically devote the resources, follow the leadership provided by the Board of Selectmen and the Conservation Commission to knit together that type of protection in literally what is the geographic heart of the community. So thank you, and I just really value being able to contribute to that.
We've been very fortunate. If people read their real estate bills, there's a section called, I think it's CPC or CPA, I forget what the exact initials are, but that's the foresight of residents many, many years ago that adopted that 3% on the real estate tax. And that's been the money that we've been able to leverage with the help from the state. Initially in the state we got some 100% reimbursements. It's a lot less now because we were one of the original communities to get involved in that program. I think we've certainly done our best to take advantage of that, and particularly in terms of buying open space and conservation land that we couldn't have without the vote of the townspeople at that time and adoption of that CPA program. So.
Yep. They really have.
Thank you for your kind
Okay.
words, and thank you very much for the action tonight.
Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Brent.
Brent.
Thank you. Congratulations on doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Okay, moving on to new business number 1, which is to vote and sign the contract renewal with Police Chief Scott Dumas. The Police Chief's contract is ready for the board to vote to approve and sign. It is a 3-year contract with a 1-year renewal provision. A contract such as this is authorized under Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 1080. So will someone make a motion to approve the contract?
I'll make that motion.
Renewal?
I'll second.
The motion to approve the renewal has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, new business number 2 is to discuss the issue of renaming the Board of Selectmen. At our last meeting, a resident during public comment period asked a question about possibly renaming the Board of Selectmen to make it a give it a gender-neutral name. So since it was Brian Disperser who made that comment. Since then, we've looked into the issue by asking our town council to tell us how exactly the town would accomplish the task of renaming the board's name and what the legal implications of that might be. And since then, we received a memo from town council on the subject. I'm not going to go into all the details, but basically it seems to me what it comes down to is that there would be 2 basic ways of changing the name of the Board of Selectmen, and I guess we'd probably change it to the Select Board. The first way would be to request the legislature to enact special legislation changing the name from the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board. And I guess we would do that through our various representatives. The second way, and this would accomplish the same purpose, would be to pass a general bylaw stating that the Board of Selectmen would hereafter be known as the Select Board, and that the Select Board would be, for all practical purposes or all legal purposes, would have all the powers and authority of a Board of Selectmen under state law. So those are the 2 steps. After each of those steps, we would have to go through our local bylaws, our zoning bylaw, and our general bylaws to change the word Board of Selectmen wherever it appears to the Select Board. Personally, if the town was going to do this, I would prefer that we enact a general bylaw because we could do that more quickly and it's totally within our control. So what it seems to me is that this change, which has been done by, I believe, many municipalities in Massachusetts, well, we certainly wouldn't be the first. This change would be fairly easy to do. It would not involve great expense. If we were to do this, I would be in favor of asking our town council to draft a bylaw to make the change. That would be probably 2 or 3 hours of legal work, in my guess. So it's really not a big expense at all. I don't think that would be the issue. And then as I said, we'd have to go through our local bylaws to change the word Board of Selectmen each time it's there. But I think we could have our own in-house staff, possibly the town planner, do that. So it's not a difficult thing to do. But the issue to me is whether whether a majority of residents in the town are in favor of this. That's one thing I'm not clear on, because ultimately I think it's up to the town if it's not up to 3 of us, it's up to the town as to whether they want to change the name. So one possibility I thought of was to put a non-binding referendum on the next election on the ballot in May, and ask the residents in town if this is something they'd be in favor of the Board of Selectmen pursuing. And that's what I think we should do. But
Yeah, that would be the election, May 14th.
right.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we would, in a non-binding vote, and we would say to the townspeople, would you be in favor of changing the name from Board of Selectmen to either not make a decision at that point or to just change it and to appoint a select committee to make recommendations on what proposal we should follow and how it should be done. And if it's a majority vote, then by all means, I don't think any one of us have any objection to it. But if it's once again, the townspeople need to vote on this. This is something we represent all the townspeople, and it certainly should be done not by us, but by a vote of townspeople. And that would give us time to consider all the different things, and the committee that would be appointed could look at what other communities are doing, how they're doing it, and come up with something that we want. Because it's a big change. Because we do need to change the wording of the bylaws and understand that the state we're still a Board of Selectmen under state law, no matter what we want to call ourselves. But the understanding is that it would open that up to, and it's the way it's going. A number of towns have done it, so I would recommend that we, does anybody here want to talk about it, ask questions, or make a comment? And I think we would like to move forward on a referendum type question.
Brian?
Brian Version, 500 Withersfield Street. I would just comment in the sense that, since I brought it up, that I think that's a respectable measure to take. It's, you know, it leaves it open to the townspeople to really make that decision. And by non-binding, you mean that would be a general question of you know, whether or not there would be a change.
Right.
Yeah, it would just,
desirable.
We'll have to work out the wording before the election.
Sure.
yeah, and after the vote, assuming that the majority, or whatever the vote is really, I think it would then come back to the Board of Selectmen to decide whether to put it on the warrant of the next town meeting, and then it would be up to the town meeting voters to decide whether to adopt it or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Ernie?
Yeah, this is just a technical question. If we change the wording in a bylaw, does that open the bylaw up to be reaffirmed and re-voted on?
What do you mean by, I'm not sure what you mean.
Make a change.
No, we're going
to
to add a bylaw.
Sorry?
We're going to add a
I
bylaw.
understand you add the bylaw, but then you said you were going to go through.
All of the anything that says Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
We're going to change that wording to,
That doesn't open up
that-
anything for any other parts of the bylaw or the meaning of the bylaw, if
change
that's
the-
what you mean. It's just changing the
It doesn't
name.
have to be separately voted. It will
No.
be-
My guess would
Yeah.
be, we check with a lawyer, but my guess would be we could just make one once and have
Yes.
include in the bylaw, the following bylaws will be, so that we know which one. We don't have to go through every single bylaw and revote that bylaw. We
Right.
just vote to insert the word in the following bylaws and
Yeah. But it would be one vote
Well-
that would be limited to
Yeah.
the name of the board, and that's all it would
Yeah.
entail.
I'm definitely in favor of the referendum.
Okay, good.
For what it's worth.
Okay, everyone's in favor.
yes,
So we want to make a motion to put this on as a non-binding referendum at our next election.
for May. I'll definitely make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to old business number 1, which is the Triton FY20 Triton update, Triton budget update. So the Triton School Committee had a meeting last Saturday in which they came out with the latest budget numbers, which includes the actual operating assessment that will be assessed for each town. These are not final numbers. The next step for the school committee, I believe, is to adopt the tentative budget. The towns have an opportunity to respond to that, and then they adopt their the final budget. But I think the numbers that they came out with Saturday morning will be the highest. They're probably not going to be higher than what came out Saturday morning. There is possibility that the numbers could go lower. But what they came out with, just briefly, is total operating expenses for FY20 of $44,143,000. And that's a difference of, I'm looking for, yeah, when you get down to the net general operating assessment, it would be an increase for all towns of $1.7 million, essentially. And then they divide that up against the 3 towns, and the lowest one would be $315,000 for Newbury, which would be 3.47% increase. Raleigh would be next. Our increase would be $789,000, which would represent a 4.14% increase. And then Salisbury gets the biggest assessment. Their increase would be $982,000, which would be an 8.41% increase. So those are the basic budget numbers. Salisbury's share portion is so large because my understanding that the relative enrollment, while the relative enrollment of Rowley and Newbury went down, the percentage of enrollment of Salisbury increased significantly. And I think I was told they're up to 39% of the enrollment are kids from Salisbury. So any discussion?
Just as a general point, Mr. Chairman, from FY19 to FY20, the drop in total enrollment in Triton is approximately 80 students, so we've less next year than what we've got this year. So the trend of dropping student population continues at a rather rapid rate. I'm not sure why. Just keeping in mind that with the amount of building going on in town, within a year or two, we could well have a jump in our enrollment because there's a lot of new houses, single-family houses being built, and I'm sure they're going to generate a number of students. So keeping in mind that, student population, our assessment this year, or last year, our assessment went up a big amount because we dropped less students than every other town.
Right, and this year
we dropped more.
Salisbury went up more, and so things shifted. So Salisbury's got a bigger piece of the pie.
So the overall issue still is that the school budget every year is increasing at a very rapid rate. And state aid they're talking about the numbers now and trying to figure out new allocations. Anything I've read at this point indicates that the state isn't going to do a heck of a lot for Triton. It's very discouraging. They're talking about redoing formulas, redoing state aid, and unless they put multiple billions of dollars into the school budget, it doesn't appear as though Triton is going to fare any large amount anyway. There'll be a pittance here and there, but the final budgets from the legislature, based on the governor's budget, Triton's getting a small increase. The town gets a small cherry sheet increase, and those will change because of the House and Senate budgets. They usually increase that amount, but it's not going to bail us out for $1 million or anything like that. So understand that as we continue forward from year to year, this year we came out, $414,000 is probably affordable based on our numbers, but it's still, we'll probably have to take money from free cash to supplement our 50% allocation of increased taxes that we give to the schools. But at least we're not in the position we were last year, where we were way over what our ability to pay was. We're only a relatively small amount this year, so that's a good sign. But just keep in mind that in the next couple of years it changes dramatically from year to year, and student population is the one that's affecting all of it, because the numbers of students are dropping, and who drops the fastest is getting the lowest increase in the budget. So right now, this year, we're breaking even to some degree anyway.
Yeah, the Triton numbers show that Raleigh's enrollment is going down by almost 40 students.
Mm-hmm.
That's including from K through 12.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dave, though I think we could see a shift in that trend. Who knows when it'll happen, but for two reasons. The development of new homes in town, and also there's a demographic factor that's been going on of people like myself, and probably like all three of us, who have had kids. The kids grow up and they leave, yet we stay in our houses. Well, we're not going to be staying in our houses forever. At some point we're going to sell them or whatever, and there'll be young families moving in. So I think this could turn around, but who knows. The other two comments I want to make about these numbers is this increase, 1.7 million, is based on a decision by the school committee and the superintendent not to expand programs or positions. So there are no new programs or positions in these numbers, and I think they made a pretty clear commitment to keep it that way. That they're not going to try to add new staff or new programs. Also, they made a substantial cut in the cost for health insurance, and bringing it almost down to zero. But they're saying that they could potentially, when the negotiations with the union is complete, reduce health insurance costs further. So they're holding that out as a possibility. So the numbers, it seems to me, could go down. They're not going to go up, I don't think. And the numbers are much better for Raleigh than last year's numbers. It seems to me they're affordable, but we'll have to see when we look at the details. But it would be nice if we could avoid the situation we had last year of the school and the towns fighting with each other and all sorts of accusations being made against each other. So I think this is hopeful.
I think we absolutely support the schools. We always have, and it's something we want to do. The issue becomes is what, the town gives us a bill, and we had to come up with the funds to pay for it. And the issue like last year was, well, how do we come up with those funds? We're restricted in how we can raise money. So consequently, if their budget skyrockets and they give us a huge bill, then we either cut back services, or we've been fortunate the last couple of years to have some free cash available that we could put into it. But free cash is big as some. It's big right now. These couple of years here, it's the amount of free cash, which really is people buy new cars, building inspector fees. All the building in town generates free cash from those fees that the building inspector charges. When people buy a new car and your excise tax goes up, that increases our free cash. There's different things like that. But if the economy starts to falter, those things go down, our free cash goes down. So it's not an unending plus all the time. It goes up and down like everything else. Right now, we're fortunate that free cash has been plentiful, and it may well be this year too. But we got to be careful, and that's why we put enough. Like last year, we had people complaining about the fact that we were putting money aside. Well, we need to put money aside because we need to be ready for those lean years, just like a homeowner does, or you make a little bonus at the course of a year in your salary or in your job. You want to put some of that money aside towards future years when you won't get that bonus, and that's what we try to do here. In the last few years, we've been very fortunate in this town to be able to develop a free cash base and some other reserve monies that we put away each year, so that if we run into a problem or a big expense, we'll have money to spend on those projects. And the other thing is, people need to understand that the selectmen don't spend the money, the citizens do. Everything we want to spend, we may recommend, but everything goes to town meeting, and town meeting votes up or down on all these different projects. So it isn't just us, and we're all citizens, and we're retirees, so we're living on our fixed incomes too. So believe me, we're not giving out we're not trying to spend money freely. We understand what people go through, and we're fortunate that we can handle it. But
I'd like to ask Nerissa Whalen, she's the chairwoman of the school committee, her request that we ask the legislature for more funds and that we make our voices heard there. I would like to support I went to the school committee meeting when the principals made their presentations, making the request that for additional staff that the school committee voted not to accept. But I graduated from Salem State in 1965, and I taught for 15 years. And back then, in those total 15 years, I might have seen 2 children who had special needs. Today, in a classroom, you're talking about 10%, maybe as high as 20% of your single class having special needs, and it's becoming more of a problem. And we can't afford the education. The Triton education is roughly about $12,000 to educate one student. But when you add on special needs costs, they can range as high as $300,000 for a single student. So you're talking about, that's the part that we want the state funding to increase. We want them to pay for the medical expenses. Yes, we'll take the kids in, we'll educate them, and I support that education, but give us that aid so that you provide the health aid that child needs.
Right. Okay, Bernie?
Yes. I think this year's discussions have been far more constructive and less problematic than last year's. So I think the tone has has shifted, and I think the tone, that shift in tone, both reflects what the Selectmen have done and Larry White has been able to do in terms of being very clear about what Rowley's ability to support the schools and the limitations on that support. But also, I think Narissa Wallen, who's the chairwoman of the school committee, has taken that to heart, and of all the school committee people, she's the most explicit in ensuring that both the school administration and the other school committee members kind of recognize the limitations that the towns are confronted by. So the moderation in the request, it's almost literally half of what last year's request was out of the gate. So it's pretty dramatic. Is a move in the right direction. Having said that, and commending Narissa for that, I still have a concern that the structural elements of the school budget still seem not to be addressed in any explicit way. We are in the third year of the teacher's contract this year, and so about $1 million of this increase is due to that contract. That's now going to be renegotiated, and 80% of the school budget are personnel costs, and the management of that and the negotiation of that contract is largely going to determine whether or not we go backwards in terms of having to basically steal money from other activity, other town services to support the schools or not. And I was there on Saturday. One of the disappointments that I had was that longer term view was never acknowledged. Obviously they can't negotiate in those kinds of sessions or start talking about contract negotiations. But we do need to be kind of aware of and thinking about the 2, the 3, the 4 years down the road and what those implications are, not only in enrollments and the continuing shrinking of the enrollment of the school system, but also what the budgetary implications are. So we are not out of the woods yet, and I think we lucked out with the medical costs this year. I haven't seen any of the details of the negotiations, but they're still very generous compared to the private sector, very generous terms, and for the townspeople, very generous terms for the medical insurance coverage, both for employees and for retirees. So there's still work, I think, that needs to be done, and I'm for continuing to kind of be noisy, I guess, about the budget process.
Well, all your points are well taken. However, I would say that I think the reason that they didn't talk about the collective bargaining session, the upcoming collective bargaining sessions on this last Saturday morning, was because they were talking about the FY20 budget, and that's what the meeting was about. But that actually that is on the agenda for the District Communications Committee meeting this Thursday, which will be in Newbury. I believe the time is 6:30. And I think you're right, that's something we have to keep our focus on, assuming FY20 is resolved, which at least in terms of Rowley is concerned, it probably will be resolved. That has to be our next focus. I would agree with that 100%.
You're lucky that we are not in
Salisbury.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to old business number 2, which is the Pine Grove School Project Update. There's 3 parts to this. First part is a staffing change. Pink & Company has informed the town of a staffing change. James Dombrowski is Larry Berger's assistant, and Pink is proposing to have Ethan Butler serve as James's replacement. So the Board of Selectmen needs to approve this staff change. And at the last school building, no, the last, building, construction, Pine Grove construction meeting, Joe and I met the new person, Ethan Butler, and I was very impressed by him.
I was.
Yeah.
And also found out that, just to give you an idea, James is the person who is tracking all of the moves. Some of the teachers are moving 2 and 3 times. The upper south wing will be completed on Friday, the 11th of February. So that's right on time, right on target. And so the construction will move down to the lower south. Well, the teachers who are in lower south have to move out. And there's one teacher, and she happens to be on the Pine Grove School Building Committee. She is the one who was, I think there are only a couple that are moving 3 times. So they have to pack up all of their equipment and move to a classroom and be there for a while, and then pack up all their equipment and move to a classroom. And they've been very good about it. But James is the one who tracks all of the moves as to who's going where, and James is the one who knows what furniture has to be where, so that all of the equipment is in the classrooms. And he does an excellent job. He's done a very, very good job since last April. And I commend him for it. And I found out that we had a couple of questions about Ethan Butler, and I found out that Ethan was the guy at Pink. They're our owner's project manager company, and Ethan is the guy who trained James to do his job. And if James does that great a job, Ethan will be just fine on taking over.
Yep.
And I would make a motion that we approved Ethan Butler as the new person on the Pink roster.
Second?
I'll second.
Motion to approve Mr. Butler has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, part 2 of this agenda item involves the work hours and fees requested by Pink and Company, the town's owner project manager for the Pine Grove School project. They've submitted a letter essentially requesting additional fees from the town in the range of $57,000 to $65,000, which they say they're going to need. They're anticipating a shortfall in their budget towards the end of the project, and they're saying that they're probably going to need that amount of money to finish their obligations under the contract. They say there's no immediate problem, so this is not something we have to vote on tonight, or I don't think we have to vote on it for some time now. I looked at the contracts that the town has entered into with Pink, and I don't see that they have the right to request this additional funding. I think, as far as I can see, the contract provides that they get a maximum of a certain amount to perform all of their services under the contract, and the contract provides that the amount paid to Pink can never exceed that amount, although it can be less than that amount. In other words, they bill on an hourly basis for their services, and they get up to the lump sum fee, not more than that. So I disagree. It seems to me that Pink's feeling that they're entitled to to request this additional funding may not be consistent with the contract. So I would like to submit this to our town council for his comments. Yes, sir.
David, this is 29 Bradford Street. So when they issue this request, provided it happens, does it give a listing of change orders or reasons they're justifying the overages?
Well, they gave reasons for it, and some of the reasons may be valid, actually. For example, one of the reasons was we ran into trouble with the project when we found out that there was a termite infestation in the columns in the all-purpose room. And as a result of that generated a large change order of, I believe, 500,000?
Between 4 and 5, yeah.
I believe most of that in contingency funds. I believe that money actually went to the construction company, Rich, and the designer, Dorn Whittier, I don't think it actually went to, any of that money went to Pink.
But
So there may
I
be
think the concern was that it was the number of increased hours.
Well, that's part of it, right.
That's why when you bid a project of this size for $39 million, you're going to have some changes in some unforeseen circumstances. And the termites were an unforeseen, although
so
they were around in 1980. But
there may be equitable reasons to give them additional funds.
Right.
But I think before we enter into discussions with them, we should have a reading from town council as to what our obligations are.
I agree.
And what their rights are, you know.
And I think, too, that we can negotiate with them, too, on this deal. They have several levels of personnel working on the site. Larry Berger is the chief clerk of the works, and according to the Mass School Building Authority, there has to be a clerk of the works on the site whenever there is work being done at the school. And so we could get a person who is a lower level but still qualified person to be clerk of the works and do the same job and maybe save us a few dollars.
Right. So what I would propose is that we refer this to town council, get his legal opinion, and then, Joe, you and I would sit down with Pink, their representatives, and try to walk through the issues, and then bring it back to the board for a vote.
I think that's very reasonable. Yep.
So,
Want a motion?
Motion to refer to town council?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay.
In the general project update, if I could.
Certainly can.
As I said, that on James's last day, which is, oh, wait a minute. I know where I made a mistake calendar-wise. It's February 8th, because our next meeting is on February 4th. And February 8th will be his last day, and the upper south will be completed on February 8th. And it's right on time, right on schedule, and the people, it's amazing to go into that area. I was there about 3 weeks ago, and you go in and you just see wires hanging all over the place, and you see the metal studs up in the new work that's for the air conditioning. It's not air conditioning, but it's the duct work is in the ceiling, and they're putting in all of that stuff. And you look at that raw work there, and you compare it to their finished work in the North Wing. It's amazing what they've done for the school. And all of the South Wing, the upper level, will be completed on February 8th, and then they will be moving on to Phase 4. And there are only 5 phases. I'm thankful, finally. And it's been a long time, but they've done a fabulous job. The architect was walking through the all-purpose room with me, and he said to me, "Is this what you expected?" And I'm looking around, and I said, "No, it isn't." And he looked at me like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "It's much better than what I expected. It's amazing."
It is amazing.
You really have to get the chance to walk through the school. And you'll get that chance in September.
Right. Okay, old business number 3 is a fire station and police station addition project update. The project is going along smoothly. Work in the existing police station is being finished up. Offices and workspace are being finished up. The project should be finished by the end of February. Well, that's
Just keeping in mind, Mr. Chairman, that everything's pretty much on time. The police department is getting ready to move the dispatch center from the new building back to the old building where it was originally in a completely renovated space. Keep in mind that the landscaping and the final coat of pavement aren't going to be completed until spring. Obviously, they can't put grass out there now. And the other comment I want to make, which I've made before, is the the comments I get is that people think the fire station's overbuilt, too big. And all I tell people is that if you look at where the fire department's worked out of for the last 50 years, it's been a disgrace. When we moved into the police station that we're renovating now, about 25 years ago, I was on that building committee, and with the day we moved in, the building was too small because the town wouldn't appropriate enough money to properly make it a proper size. So one thing we did as a board and requested voters to okay was that we want this fire station, this police station, to be sized correctly, with correct maintenance, sized correctly for the next 40, 30, 40, 50 years. The construction costs are going up, the average of 5% a year at this point. So we did not want to come back in 10 or 15, 20 years and subject taxpayers at that time to the needs for an addition on that, particularly the fire station building. The other thing is we're adding 2 additional firefighters in the spring. They'll be hired probably in the month of March or shortly thereafter from the last budget. Anybody that's associated with the fire department knows that we're having extreme difficulty getting call firefighters to respond. The workload is just such now with the increased number of calls, the amount of training they have to do to have people responding to calls in the middle of the night and then going to work in Boston or whatever during the day is impossible. So it's there's sometimes when there's only 2 or maybe 3 firefighters available to respond to a call. So I would anticipate in the next 10, 12, 14 years we'll probably be hiring another half a dozen or more full-time firefighters. And that facility is big enough to support the extra help plus all the specialized equipment that we need to run a modern fire department. The days of giving a fireman a helmet and a jacket and now you're a fireman, they're long gone. And that building is going to serve the town well. So as people look at the size of it, yeah, it's big. It is big. But it's something that we need to build it. We built it right. The contractor's done a great job. The architect did a nice job of designing it. The chief is going to, believe me, as any of you people that have your houses, no matter how much space you have in your house, you always need more. And we certainly did not want to run into that problem with particularly the fire department in the next few years. So the building is being built for 30 to 50 years, and I think it's going to serve us well. And it's coming along as projected. And it's a big expense, but hey, it's something that we need to do. With Rowley's, we talk about naming the board, coming into the modern world with possibly renaming what the board calls itself. All our facilities, the school facilities and the public safety facilities need to be modernized and kept up to date too. And the shame of it is that we've tried for this any 3 or 4 times in the past and the taxpayers have always turned it down. It's a shame that both projects were okayed at the same time. As board members, we're thankful that happened, but it's a little bit tough on the taxes. But it's something that we need to do, and I think the town is going to benefit, and I think once people see where it is and what it is and how it's going to work, I think we'll all be proud of it and make the best of the cost. So with that said, everything's going along well up there. The police will be in their building. The fire department's probably not going to move into their building till sometime in March. There'll be piecemeal moving up there, but the full-scale movement won't take place until March.
Yeah. Chief Dumas said tonight that the dispatch area is being set up and it looks good.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, so hopefully by the end of the year, with the Pine Grove School being finished in the fall, we will be out of the construction business.
Which
will make me
looking
happy.
forward to that.
Brian?
Will there be any public tours for the safety building when it's open?
Yeah. Once.
I think you can count on that.
Yeah.
I know you're going to have a tour of Pine Grove because that's my.
Yeah.
But I'm also on the police fire, and I know
be.
Dave and I agree that should happen too. We've both toured the fire station and the police station, and I didn't find the offices. There's a lot of space in that wing on the fire station, but I think about 60% of it seems to be file storage area, where they have a tremendous amount of records that they have to keep according to law, and so they have that area available to them, but there will be tours for both buildings.
Once the weather breaks in the spring, I think we'd probably like to get it landscaped first, and then so sometime during late spring, early summer, I think we'll have both buildings open for public viewing for a period of time. And I think you'll appreciate what's in there. And keep in mind, too, with both the police and fire facilities now, in the old days, there was a men's room, and that was it. Now we got men's and women's locker rooms, showers, living spaces. Fire department obviously has bedrooms for 24-hour coverage when that comes someday. So I mean, the space needs, when you really look at it, are all justified. And though it looks big for our little town, this little town is doubled in size in the time I've been here, and the way they're building houses, it's God knows how much bigger it's going to get the next 10 or 15 years. But I think we can be proud of both of those facilities, and thank God we did the school, because the school needed it badly, and that's another facility that we can take a lot of pride in, as we've done the right thing. So.
Yeah, one of the committees that I'm on is the Raleigh Emergency Management, and you should see the meeting area that we go to down at the fire station on Hammond Street. You climb up this set of stairs and you wonder if you're going to survive it to get to the top, and you go into this area. It's just an old, decrepit building, and the meeting area that they have at the new fire station will have more space, but we'll be able to make presentations, and it's just able to hold a better meeting, and more with electronics and everything. It'll be a better deal for the town, for the various groups that will make use of it.
Okay, next is minutes. We have minutes from January 14. Dave, I see that you were absent in that, so we don't have 3 people to vote on those minutes, so we'll table them.
Well, he came in at 7 o'clock.
Oh, you did? Oh, until 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
Oh, it's only 2 minutes.
It's only 2 minutes.
Wow.
Okay.
I'll make a motion
Pretty
to
exact on
approve.
the clock.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes
I'll
from
second.
January 14th.
I'll second.
Okay, minutes for the January 14th, and the motion to approve has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it.
And I'll make a motion to approve the executive session minutes for, that was for January 24th, I correct myself, and on the executive session for January 14th.
No, they're both the 14th.
Oh, are they both the 14th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Motion to approve the executive session minutes for January 14 has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Announcements. The town has the following vacancies: Board of Light Commissioners, Agricultural Commission Associate, Cultural Council, Fence Viewer, 3 positions, Wood, Lumber, and Bark Inspector, Zoning Board of Appeals Associate, 2 seats, and Deputy Shellfish Constables, 2 positions. For more information on these positions, please contact the Selectmen's office at 948-2372. The Rowley Food Pantry is in need of donations. Donations can be left at the Raleigh Public Library. The food pantry is open on Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and on Thursdays from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.